Hello, and welcome to this episode where I'm going to speak about my experiences around what Ascension really is. And if you don't know me, I'm Bianca. I'm a galactic channel. I channel my guides, which are various different galactic beings. And what I love to speak about is how we can own our multidimensionality, our multidimensional selves in the real world. So, this episode is an absolutely no BS approach to understanding what ascension looks like. And the reason why I want to bring this episode today is because I see that there is a lot of discussion in this space, in the spiritual space, around what ascension looks like. And sometimes it can be presented as the most easeful, love light, very, very sort of simplistic way of looking at things. And whilst, yes, when we ascend, we experience higher timelines, we start to experience things, new experiences, things that we came here to experience. But what I really want to say is that does not always look like a linear process. And I think that is the misconception that I am seeing out there, particularly in the space of Instagram and social media. It is not necessary, or it's not even real, that ascension looks like a beautiful linear line going upwards. If that was the case, we'd miss so much. The point of ascending, the point of even being here is to learn. The point of moving to higher timelines is to experience and enjoy the journey, not just the destination. And so it is not designed in a way that is linear. I like to think of it as like, it's almost like little steps. I see it's like steps that go up. Or you can see it as sometimes it's like, expansion. So each stage you expand further and further, but you need to kind of experience something. You need to learn something about yourself. You need to do something different. You need to move to those higher timelines. And to do that, it requires a lot of internal work, a lot of internal inquiry, actually. And that's the bit I think that sometimes feels confusing. And I've definitely experienced it where I've had moments where I've thought, as my gifts began opening up, as my understanding of what I'm here for started to emerge and get really clear, things actually didn't feel as easeful as maybe I was expecting. And some days I can actually hear myself saying, and maybe you can relate to this, why is it this hard? Why does this not feel easier? I thought that, this whole process of connecting more spiritually would be easier. In fact, it is choosing a harder route often to choose to understand and ascend and choose those higher timelines. Because if it was easeful, we'd all be able to do that without a second's thought. We I will explain it like this. When we exist in the current scenario, if we are understanding the world that we've been living in prior to waking up is almost like a treadmill conveyor belt, we are just going through the motions of life. When you wake up to what's really true, when you see what the expanded version of yourself, you can see beyond that hamster wheel, if you like. Now, if you choose to stay on it, sometimes it can be easier because you are falling into, I would say, like the process of 3D reality. You are staying within the realms of that 3D reality. When you choose to break free of it, ultimately what you are getting access to is more sovereignty, more freedom, more of who you truly are, and you start to learn that. But that is a process, and it's a process that you came here for, not to bypass it. The spiritual bypassing is quite real, and I see that out and around. That, just because you wake up to multidimensional self, because you understand that there is that you can work with the universe, you can work with the quantum field to actually create a life that is better for you, which is true. Absolutely, it is. And you are powerful in your own capabilities as a human. But it is a process of learning or unlearning, I prefer to say, unlearning ways of being that were potentially holding you in the reality that you're in. So to move up, move through the stages, we need to be able to go within. And the way that my guides kind of describe it to me is that we need to inquire internally, almost going like visualize it like going down into the depths to get the information, to really learn and to come back out like the phoenix rising, like we come back from the ashes. Each time we ascend, we need to have experienced something to come through. Now, those things don't need to be massive things. Like, you can think about big examples, and I'll talk about my own examples here to help with this. You don't need to have massive, great examples of this. It doesn't need to be you crash out of a corporate job. It doesn't mean that you have to have something really serious happen around health or somebody else's health. It doesn't mean that, but it does mean that there is a requirement to, one, look within, and two, make changes. And those things don't come easy, right? The easy thing is to not make those decisions. The easy thing is to keep going with the way things were. If you are here to make some significant impact, then it's likely that you are here to experience change in your life and in the external world around you. So I first want to speak around my own experiences with this. So how do I want to put it like this? Ultimately, when I woke up to my multidimensional self, the process of that was happening a long time prior to the real opening that happened for me. So what I was experiencing was this feeling, and maybe some of you can relate to this feeling that something was off, like that I wasn't being true to myself anymore. And it was like I could go through with the motions for a period of time in my life, but at a certain point, and it was my external world as well driving some of that, I realized that I was almost abandoning myself in the process of following what I thought was the linear route to success. So this is from my own personal example, and maybe you can relate to it in your own life. So in that example, I mean, I speak about my journey in another episode, but for context, I was in a corporate job. So this is the classic one, but this was my experience. I was in a corporate job and I was kind of kidding myself that I was okay. And because I didn't know what the identity of me would look like if I let go of that corporate job. But deep down, my soul was calling me to something else. My soul was telling me this is not the place. And my external environment was kind of responding in a way that was making it uncomfortable because I wasn't being true and I wasn't being who I'm here to be. And I felt compromised in the job that I was in. I felt compromised. My integrity was compromised. The truth that I am so passionate about speaking, I felt like I had to hold back. And it started to actually really weigh quite heavy on me at a certain point. So actually, you know, all those emotions that I was experiencing, and it felt really, really heavy and dark at the time, quite heavy, was actually really brilliant information. And because of me being able to look at that and say, this is information, what is it that I need to do now? I was able to make some choices that were hard. So I made some really significant choices at that time without knowing necessarily what was going to come, but I just knew that it wasn't going to be what I was carrying on doing. And maybe you can resonate with this as well, that when I was in that situation where I knew I was really unhappy, whilst it felt really scary to walk away from it, it also felt more scary in some ways to stay there because I couldn't imagine the rest of my life looking like that. And the only way through would be the change. Now, you've got kind of two hard choices in that sort of scenario. Now, I'm not saying it always has to be the extreme, but it's helpful to share an example around this. If I was to choose to stay where I was on that timeline, it would have been pretty uncomfortable anyway. It was uncomfortable, and I would have been losing my light over and over, choosing to lose my light because I wasn't able to shine my light in that context. So, where I think the myth busting needs to happen around the spiritual growth is that it is a linear process, because I had to go through some personal experiences there in that moment to learn what it is I needed. But I actually needed to step out of the world that I was in, go and spend some time with myself, recalibrate my nervous system so that I could then go into the next thing, which would be my business at that time. But I didn't know that, and so it's that process of understanding where are you what do you need, and then allowing the new thing to emerge. And it's that dark period that is so, so rich. It's that what some people describe as this void moment that is so rich. And I can think of that multiple times. I've been writing that again recently with where I'm going with my marketing business, because I had evolved beyond what my current experience was. But the new timeline, if you want to see it like that, hasn't landed or hadn't landed at that point. So that middle bit where it's like, some people describe it like that womb experience. The womb is dark. You don't see the light there, but it's bringing and creating something new. And through that creation, the very powerful aspect of that creation is to really understand what it is that that new version, that new timeline is going to be, how you're going to bring that to life, and what feels true. Because it is absolutely truth of who you are, and making decisions from that space is going to help you to elevate to the next timeline. That is not always easy, because it's not always easy to accept the truth. It's not always easy to look at it dead in the eye. The reality I had, if I go back to that one example that I was speaking about before, is the truth was the identity that I'd created for myself, this corporate Bianca, was not who I wanted to be. And actually, it wasn't me at all. And the truth of understanding that I wasn't her was hard. But the experience of then allowing myself to not know what would come, and to actually inquire who I am, to create the next version, next iteration, based on more alignment with who I am, I had to let go of something. I had to let go of that version of me. Right. So that is what I mean when we're speaking about how we move through to higher timelines. That does not look linear. So that's the first thing I want to say. And choosing truth over comfort is necessary, because it would be comfortable to stay where I am. It would be comfortable to not inquire. But through that discomfort, through that rich territory, you learn. And that's what we came for. We came for the experience of learning. So the other thing I want to say is there's this other aspect of spirituality whereby there's this discussion of our nervous system, needing to constantly feel in like very easeful in our bodies. Now that's great. And that is obviously the aim, is to feel like we can hold our nervous systems in check. But what I really want to bust this myth around, because what I've seen, and as a mentor as well, I am mentoring women who are in business or, making some changes in their lives. And what I perceive from what I see in the world is that sometimes because of this belief that our nervous system needs to be really, in order to manifest, this is the myth, in order to manifest, great abundance in my life, my nervous system needs to be completely in check all the time. This is actually creating a problem, which is that people are waiting for that perfect moment where the nervous system is going to be fully aligned. Now, I can tell you, every time I've quantum leaped, and that's happened multiple times in my life, and I can look back on that now, and I'm just coming out the other side of one of my biggest ones, it's never a comfortable experience in the body. It's, it'd be lovely if it was, and maybe someone will tell me that has been the case for them. But for me and my experiences, what I can tell you is that is not the truth. In fact, I know, and this is me and my personal experience, I am an emotional being. I feel things with every inch of me. And when I experience my external world responding to me about something, it shows me where I need to go. And sometimes those emotions, the emotions of anger, the emotions of fear, they are showing me something. And what I've become or come to understand that I've got really good at in my human experience is to look that dead in the face. Not be scared of it, scared of the emotion, or have any fear around what that emotion is telling me, to actually sit with it and allow it to be felt. And then that's how you transmute it into your power, you know, bringing that experience, feeling that experience, knowing and acknowledging it, not bypassing it. If we ignore it, this is how we loop, because we're not actually leaning into the information that we're being given. In order to go, so everybody thinks my next level is where it's going to it's all going to feel easeful. I can completely tell you that every level has got its own challenges. And each time you're going to unlock something new for you to look at. That's the point of this experience. So if we go around saying it's all going to be love and light and easeful, we're actually just setting ourselves up for a level of failure, because the point of being here is to enjoy the journey, is to feel the emotion, to experience the experience. The power is in being able to hold yourself despite that. Is being able to understand the difference between when the information is your intuitive in a system, in a guidance system, and when it's your external environment creating it. Learning to hold the energy of what you're really creating, who you're choosing to be, despite the external chaos, if there is chaos. Allowing yourself to respond to the external environment from truth of who you are. It takes strength. It takes learning. It takes time to experience that. And when we loop, my guides always talk about this, when we're in a karmic loop, for example, it's because we're creating the future in our minds based on past events. So it's being able to inquire, what is it that I'm experiencing? What is it that I'm feeling? Where is this coming from? Sometimes you might know. Sometimes it's from a current experience. Sometimes it's from a lifetime that you don't know consciously, but it feels real in the body. I want to speak to my own challenges around money fears, because I think this is something that each one of us can associate with, right? It's rare that this isn't a challenge for everyone, because here's the fact: at this current time, in this current lifetime, and potentially it might change, but right now, we do require money in order to exchange. That is part of the exchange system that we have today. So, you know, and abundance is beyond just financial. Yes, I do agree with that. And we don't need to look to just the financial for abundance to be received, but it is a key part of what we're here to experience. And the challenges with undoing the conditioning around money is real. I have a real history in my family from a generational aspect. We've had, in this lifetime, I experienced serious challenges with financial circumstances. So to explain it, when I was much younger, a teenager, we lost everything. We had a bankruptcy in our family, and that has impacted me as an adult. And sometimes things happen in my business, so I can really speak to a recent example about this. And it might not even be that thing is a big deal in the long term. It can be just a small trigger of something unexpected happens with money, and I can feel the visceral impact of that. It's like my body responds like I was 13. And maybe, and I will be inquiring on this actually as a result of this conversation, because I think it's an interesting one. My guides sometimes show me where there's past life experiences, because it's so visceral for me. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a past life experience that I still need to work through around that, because and I'm shedding the layers of that each time I go up a level in my business, in my experience, in my time here. But I think that's a good way of seeing it. It's like shedding, because just because you've looked at that. So I'm really, really acutely aware of that is a challenge for me. It's been a challenge throughout my lifetime. I am working through that. I am looking to break that down, and I am moving through it. And I spend, I understand it, and I work with the energy of holding that and knowing that I'm here to move through those, that particular challenge, right? But each time I experience it at a different level, and the feeling of that is different. Now, some people I've heard say, when I get to 100K, my kind of problems are over, or it'll be fine when I get to this point financially. Yeah, but then, it's a new level, new devil. There's always something that's going to come. And it's about understanding and seeing it for what it is, but not responding. So, talking about the karmic looping, not responding from that past version, responding from this version, being grounded, understanding that you are creating a new timeline, understanding that that is information, and then allowing your body to feel all the feelings, allowing your body to experience that fear that, for example, in that context, I will feel the fear. I will let it come up and through me. I really experience like dancing is big for me if I am struggling to move the energy of that through. I work with my guides. This is where energy work is so powerful. I sit with my guides and I ask them to help me to move that energy through me. I ask them to show me the wisdom that can come from what I'm feeling in my body, and then release it, help me to release it. What that does not mean is that I never experience it again. That does not mean that. And I think that there is some challenges around what is being shared around what healing looks like, that it is a one and done experience. It is not. So each time I inquire about it, each time I look at it in the face, each time the external environment presents me an opportunity, like look at it that way, an opportunity to go deeper with this particular wound, it's my responsibility to choose how I'm going to behave. It's my responsibility to choose my reaction, but responding from that emotional place isn't always helpful. So really inquire, get into the body, understand where it's coming from. If you want to go, sit with your guides, bring that information up and through, and then allow it to settle as you move forwards. It's going down, it's going into the darkness and coming back up. And that's where transformation comes from. That is how it looks. That's the point of, the symbolism around the phoenix is going down into the darkness and not being afraid of it. One thing that I've experienced as I've gone through this ascension journey from where I am now to where I've been, I'm not scared of it. When I experience this, I'm willing to look at it right in the face and say, okay, what's the juice that I've got from this? What am I experiencing? Not dwell on it. That's important. Not dwell on it and spend loads of time analysing it. Feel it, understand it, move through it. Move through it. Sometimes it's that quick. It's a few days. The more experienced, the more ascended you become, the quicker that process becomes. At the beginning, it's sometimes slower. But what I'm really here saying is that do not fear the darkness. Do not fear those moments where it feels really challenging. Even if maybe on the surface it's not as challenging as you're experiencing it in your body, allow that to be what is being shifted and moved. That's how we ascend. The only way up is through the self. That is being communicated to me by my guides over and over. So what's really important is to understand that when you are in that place, as much as possible, to take the gold from those voidy kind of darker moments where it feels like you don't know where you're going, or it feels like you're a little bit lost, or it feels like you're walking in the woods in the darkness, because the light will be there and it will see you through. And that's what elevating different timelines looks like. So what I want to say is, often the spiritual community promotes ease as what ascension looks like. But I want to say that what we should really be talking about is that ascension looks like depth. It looks like depth of experience. It looks like depth of character. It looks like the depths of your soul, your truth within you. And it's understanding that so that it can come forwards. Sometimes it feels amazing. And when you go into those highs, those feelings of feeling really ascended, feeling really magical. And there are moments like that where we manifest instantly and there are opportunities flying in, and it can feel like that and it should feel like that. But don't be afraid when it doesn't, because when it doesn't, it's a shedding process. It's an elevation process. In fact, it is you about to hit the new level. New levels come with some level of requirement to go within, to really embrace the wisdom that sits in the darkness so that you can elevate beyond it. So, what I want to say is ascension actually is being fully aware of when there is an opportunity to grow. Ascension is being able to understand that your nervous system may be speaking to you in certain ways. And of course, it is designed to keep you safe, right? So when you're elevating to a new level, your nervous system's going to experience something. But the truth is, when you learn to really master this, it's about holding yourself in the energy of where you're going. And it's finding the ways to allow to move through it with your nervous system rather than waiting for the perfect moment. It's about finding the tools and the techniques that are going to help you to regulate your nervous system so that you can hold the truth, you can hold the direction despite the external environment. And what I also want to say is, in order to ascend, you cannot skip it. You cannot skip it. So, when it feels hard, find those individuals, find the people that can help you to move through these spaces. And there's been so many times in my own life where I can think about that. And I've had beautiful coaches that have helped me. I've got incredible family members that have seen me through that. But sometimes the bypassing will hold you back. It is that 3D bypassing that will actually keep you stuck, as opposed to elevate you to where you really truly want to go. So I want to just give you one last example of how the bypassing can hold you where you are. I think this is just dropped in as a really good example for me to share. I used to live in London, and I lived in a two-bed flat with a little girl. And whilst there was nothing terrible about it, it was fine. It really wasn't making me happy. I wanted more space. I was ready to move on, and I wasn't really enjoying the work that I was doing. I knew that there were some challenges in my work environment. I had all those sort of things that I knew I needed to look at. But what was happening was, because of where I was at the time, and I didn't feel like I was strong enough to look at it, decided to try to move myself to where I am now. I really passionately wanted to move to Bristol, which is a city in the UK, which has got a lot more space, where we could have a house that would look different to being in central London, more space, more room, slower pace of life. I really wanted that. But what I wasn't willing to do was look at the challenge I was experiencing in my corporate job. So I was trying to create the change over here, knowing deep down that the real problem was what was going on in my corporate world. And I was not willing to make the changes because I felt that that was unsafe. At the time, it felt scary. So my idea in my logical mind, by the way, not always the best direction, but my logical mind was saying, stay where I am and just move the house. And the universe kept on, it was just budging up against me. The house wouldn't sell, the flat wouldn't sell, we didn't find the right property. Everything just was difficult with it. It just wasn't happening because I was bypassing. I was not willing to look at what I really needed to do. Now, when I became able and ready, because ultimately we're not always ready, the timeline for this is unique. We choose the timeline. So I was ready at a certain point to say, okay, I'm going to look at this. What do I really need? And the first place to start was with the job. So as soon as I made those changes, everything opened up. Now, that timeline of me moving to Bristol was there, but I wasn't able to access it without going in, without really looking at what I needed to do and making those decisions, those choices that were the hard decisions, the ones that were based on truth, not bypassing, really the truth of the matter. Once I made those changes, everything responded. The work that I then got became remote, so it allowed me to make the move that I wanted. The universe completely went with me because I was able to see and take that leap in knowing where I was really going. Without the logic being there, I did not know. When I stepped out of that job, I did not know that I could make that happen, but I knew in my soul that was the right thing to do, and it felt different. Once I was able to make those changes, the universe was responding to me. That's the ascension. That's going all the way down to the depths, inquiring, coming back up, making the choices, responding from a new version, and allowing the universe to respond. That's how it works. So if I'd continued to bury my head in the sand and pretend that it was fine and try to make these incremental changes without truly looking, the changes I was really looking for maybe they would have happened, who knows, but it was just not feeling easeful. When I chose to actually go down into the depths, what then happened, the way the universe responded to me was phenomenal. It was out of this world. Within 6 months of that decision being made, we bought a house here, and everything aligned in the most magical and easeful way. Our house sold for over the asking price. Previously, it was not selling at all. It was not, the difference was not the context. It was the timeline. It was that I had chosen to let go of something, the old version of me, and move into this version of me. And, I've expanded beyond that. And right now, I won't speak about it now, but right now I'm going through another evolution of that where I'm having to let go of some big things and move into this new timeline without really knowing what's on the other side of that. And that's the thing. It's okay not to know, but it's good to have the feeling of the direction and just allow the universe to respond with you. But you need to do the work. You can't bypass it. You cannot, it's like that rhyme, that kid's rhyme. You can't go under it, you can't go over it, you've got to go through it. You have got to go through it. You have got to be willing to look at what it is that is going on for you in your inner world, for you to create your outer world. That is what this means. So that's what I want to leave you with. I want to say thanks for being here. If you love this episode, then please then just subscribe, because it helps me to reach more people. And I have loved bringing this to you today. So thanks again, and I will see you on the next one.